Microphone check, 1, 2, what is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service.
Here we are again at the end of a rainbow.
You know the saying of, it's not what you say, but how you say it? This is a point that's been proven time and time again in politics and certainly in music. And I think this dynamic applies very nicely to R.A.P Ferreira, because although his witty, philosophical musings have been present in his music since the beginning of his decade-plus long career, I don't think his music has ever been better, and that's because of how he's saying it, not what he's saying. The packaging, from the beats to the way Ferreira rhymes, has evolved tremendously from when I first heard him on Things That Happen at Day and Night in 2013 to where he is now with his latest album, 5 to the Eye with Stars. Ferreira has continuously sculpted his sound to great results, and I can't wait to explain how. The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth album and song reviews, as well as artist interviews and general rap commentary sprinkled in between on all of what the mainstream and underground rap scenes have to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show. R.A.P Ferreira, formerly known as Milo, has been one of underground rap's brightest and smartest stars, with a one-of-a-kind approach to music that is remarkably thoughtful and full of joy, incorporating jazz into his musical formula to a significant degree in recent years too. He has really put out some seriously amazing work over this past decade. Most recently, he's put out a great album in Diamond Cutter Scriptures late last year, and even put out a blues country album earlier this year. So what I expected this new album to sound like was not abundantly clear, especially given this is the third album in less than a year from R.A.P Ferreira. I was intrigued to hear what we were in store for. So the first takeaway I gathered was that 5 to the Eye with Stars is so light on its feet, meaning it's never deeply entrenched into one particular style or vibe. From song to song, Ferreira zips through a diverse set of sounds with a real sense of vigor that fuels this album with a vibrant energy. Ferreira is in complete maestro mode, expertly controlling how this album is paced. There are moments that are captivatingly lavish and grand, with sterling displays of lyrical craftsmanship. And then there are also moments that are more reserved and tranquil. But no matter what, this record never loses its center, because Ferreira successfully bobs and weaves through the various musical tones of these beats and strikes different emotional chords with an effortless charisma that powers his typically witty quips to entertaining heights, where he can be coy, playful, and wholeheartedly genuine all on the same album, song, verse, and even line. As a performer, R.A.P Ferreira is at the peak of his powers. And hell, maybe this isn't even the peak, because the rate of improvement and development in his flows and lyricism has been a very nice sight to see throughout his entire career. People often forget that many considered his music some form of spoken word. It wasn't considered necessarily true rapping or real rapping when he broke out first in the early 2010s. Now, contrasting that with how he sounds now, putting some odd critiques of his music back then aside, it is very obvious how much more comfortable he sounds on the mic, which has allowed him to expand the range of emotions and energies that his music can put off really, really nicely. Because his ability to communicate his deeply philosophical and vulnerable ideas have never been more sharp, where he can slightly tweak his delivery, his vocal tone, or word choice at the drop of a dime to better suit the needs of a given track. This level of mastery is definitely not something that R.A.P Ferreira is not aware of, because throughout this album, it's very clear that Ferreira is very confident in what he can do with a microphone, and he's having a lot of fun doing it too. People don't credit Ferreira enough for making smart music that doesn't necessarily fit into the stereotype of ridiculously morose and despondent rapping about the world's ills and the real problems of society. Obviously, there are moments that are heavier on this album, but there are enough zany moments in his music too, and on this album, that makes his brand of thoughtful rap quite listenable. And above it all, Ferreira's thoughtful rhymes ring true because it's delivered with a finesse that has only improved with time. Now, going back to that idea of listenability, or in other words, accessibility, with 5 to the I with stars, it's something that you wouldn't typically expect to be present with music that touches on the topics R.A.P Ferreira typically touches on, but given the performance ability I already mentioned and the execution with the production, this album goes down remarkably easy, whether you're actively listening to it or not. 5 to the Eyes with Stars pulls from a similar set of musical influences that his past few albums have, where jazz and off-kilter key melodies, etc., play a significant part in the musical DNA of this album. That being said, this new album varies slightly in a few different ways. With Ferreira's last album, Diamond Cutter Scriptures, that one was very nocturnal and low-key. Bobson was a bit more scattered and all over the place at times. And Purple Moonlight Pages was just this big, giant, sprawling epic. 5 to the I with Stars, though, sort of marries some of those nocturnal elements of Diamond Cutter Scriptures with the lively jazz-first, jazz-forward sound of Purple Moonlight Pages, and synthesizes it into a clean musical compound. The exploration of jazz in these beats absolutely shine, particularly on the intro and especially Mythicizer, produced by the god Kenny Siegel, which, as Ferreira stated on the Twitter timeline to me, was recorded in an abnormal way for him, where he, Hemlock Erst, and Kenny Siegel created this song during a residency that they were doing through daily jam sessions. And you can really hear that organic feel with how all of the elements come together on this song. It's just truly one of the best songs on this album, but just one of the best songs of R.A.P Ferreira's entire career. But this spirit of having finely tuned beats with different sounds that just mix together beautifully and carefully chosen words really just define this album overall. There is a great balance between structure and then looser musical elements where little flourishes of extra instrumentation or odd weirdness in the beats come through, but not too much to disrupt this very smooth flow of the album. So although 5 to the I features only one Kenny Siegel produced beat, if you told me this was produced by Kenny Siegel alongside his Jefferson Park Boys counterparts as part of that producer group that produced all of Purple Moonlight Pages, I would have believed it. It's not the exact sound by any means, but it's got a lot of similar elements, as I previously mentioned, because the steady instrumental build-ups, the crescendos are just so beautifully handled. There is a remarkable sense of pace and ebb and flow achieved in such a short amount of time on these 23 minutes that we get on this record. But this is actually sound that was achieved with many different cooks in the kitchen, including D Styles, Rose Noir, Fritham, and Daddy Kev, who also mixed and mastered this album terrifically. 5 to the I with Stars is the most straightforward and streamlined album of Ferreira's entire career. In contrast with the sprawling epic that was Purple Moonlight Pages, 5 to the Eyes with Stars is supremely concise at just 23 minutes. Now, with albums around that 20 to 25 minute mark, there's always that possibility that the artist doesn't have enough time to fully flesh out their ideas. However, with an artist like Ferreira, that just really isn't too much of a problem, but there is a caveat to that. Because my only real main critique that I have with this album is that I wish it was longer. And I know that's a pretty basic critique to give, but I just don't feel like 23 minutes was enough to fully maximize the impact that this record could have had. Because I actually adore the balance between the low-key and high-key moments of this album, both in tone and like musical instrumentation. I find this album does an incredible job of remaining cohesive even as the moods change, simply because of its elastic frontman on the mic and the consistent use of bright percussion and like-minded musical elements and layered instrumentation in every single beat that really makes it all feel like they're connected, all part of the same musical idea, musical identity. But I just wish there were more beats to hear in this vein because it's genuinely produced so brilliantly. And on the lyrical side of the coin, I don't get that same complete, fulsome picture from R.A.P Ferreira that I got as strongly on Purple Moonlight Pages in particular. Even though his raps are so nutrient dense, packing so much into his verses that even with such a short runtime, there are a lot of lyrical nuggets to chew on, I don't think that fully makes up for this album being so brief, where it comes and goes so quickly, especially given how smooth the album is musically. I don't always leave this album feeling like I had my brain activated or I had my thoughts provoked in as strong a way as R.A.P Ferreira's music normally has, or at least aspires to be, at least how I see it. And maybe that's just a function of what this album was trying to do, because this is definitely the most like neutral, or one of the most neutral feeling R.A.P Ferreira albums ever, where he just really seems super content and at peace. And maybe I, as the listener, am looking for something a bit more frantic, something a bit more climactic that he doesn't really provide to us. But still, there's something to be said about how concise and compact this album is, where you can just put it on and be completely immersed in such a beautiful, gorgeous, and thoughtful musical experience. R.A.P Ferreira has been on a great artistic run for several years now, but I think he brought a level of focus and attention to detail to this music creation process that he hasn't ever done until now. This is a razor-sharp slice of lyrical wizardry that sounds beautiful, and I guarantee you, maybe if it didn't make as much of an impact with you at the beginning on those first few listens, which was definitely the case with me, give it some time. It's very short. You have a lot more opportunities to check this out in full. Give it that front to back listen. You won't regret it. This is one of R.A.P Ferreira's absolute best projects of his entire career. So there we have it, another episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some new perspectives and insights into what the greatest art form known to man in hip-hop music has to offer. If you want to support the show in the most meaningful way possible, it would be my absolute honor to have you as a patron in the new Rap Music Plug podcast Patreon. Through this Patreon, you will be getting exclusive content such as bonus episodes, exclusive album recommendations, exclusive playlists, early access to episodes, and more. And above all, though, you will be able to support the show directly in a way that will not only justify the crazy amount of time I spend on this show already, but allow me to cover some of the expenses related to supporting all of these great artists that we cover on the show through the website, and will allow us to sustain and build on this amazing growth that the RMPP has experienced recently. Big shout out to Dano of Free Music Empire, Levi, Steel Tip Dove, Kakoa, Mahima, Jeff, Mitch, Dash Lewis, Pancake Cleaner, Trey, Noah, Justin, Brandon, Joe, Gavin, Matt, Teddy Faley, Jackson, Kian, Slumber Logic, Fatman Tomb, and Khalid for your generous support through the Patreon. I really appreciate it. So if you have any questions about any of the Patreon stuff, or just want to keep tabs on the show, interact with me on rap music and all the great stuff that we can talk about, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rapmusicplugpod, or shoot me an email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. But that's enough self-promotion for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.